Thank you very much. It's 5 minutes gone just in the introduction, I think. A little bit long. Okay, thank you very much to the organisers, to Sarawak SPCA, for giving me the opportunity to talk to you today. As many of you know, I'm passionate about talking about capacities of animals, emotional, cognitive capacity of animals, and that's what this talk is going to all be about. So nothing on elephants, nothing on macaques, nothing on bears. I left that all to Jill. Hopefully, can we have the slides, please? Great, thank you. Right, okay, so the topic is all about the rich capacities, emotional, social, cognitive capacities of animals. And when we talk about these capacities, I'm talking about the importance of things like social groupings to social animals, cultural diversity and transmission from one individual to another, the communication, and then all the things that we understand, these feelings of pain and fear and anxiety, as well as these positive feelings of pleasure and play, which we know all of these things are incredibly important in animals' lives. And we now know that animals are incredibly complex individuals. And we've learnt over time, and I'm glad to say, as time progresses, we're seeing this not just in the birds and the mammals and the reptiles, but in the fishes, in the decapod crustaceans as well, with mammals having these capacities for reasoning, problem solving, planning, abstract thinking, being self-aware and abilities to learn, as well as these emotional capacities for empathy and ways of behaving which are being interpreted as moral behaviors. So I'm going to take an example of one of the animals which most people know I have a huge amount of respect for, the humble hen. If we look at some of the capacities of the hens, we know they're incredibly social animals. We know that individuals will develop incredibly strong bonds with other individuals. These individuals will synchronize their activity. So individuals will feed together, they will preen together, they will roost together, they will sleep together. Two individuals doing the same thing on a daily basis together. They have their own language. They have their own postures, their own behaviors. They give displays, which gives information to other hens, and a huge range of vocalizations which are being understood by other hens within their social group. Therefore, they communicate socially, and they communicate referentially. So they're communicating information, specific information about things happening within their environment to others within their environment. So there's an intentionality to the communication that they're delivering, and they're providing others with a mental representation of something which is in their environment, to give them that information to say, this is what is in the environment, I can see this is what is coming our way. The mothers are maternal. They are protective of their young. In fact, mothers will go out of their way and maybe even risk their own lives to protect their young. In situations, in extensive situations where mothers will be with their chicks, if, say, a potential predator comes nearby, the mothers will signal to the chicks to hide, to go somewhere safe, and then try to distract the potential predator away from their chicks. They have emotional contagion, the potential for empathy between themselves and other individuals, particularly between the mothers and the chicks, but also between adult individuals. They are known to enjoy life if they have the opportunity. The chicks in particular are known to play socially. The chicks and adults will engage in object play. They learn socially. So individuals learning, chicks learning from their mothers, but also adult individuals learning from each other. Individuals understanding the objectives that somebody is doing, that another individual is doing, and the intention, and then picking up that skill so that they can learn how to find food, how to solve problems. They have great memory abilities. They can store information. They can recall that information. They can create mental images in their heads of things which are not existing at the same time, but they are aware of. They have the ability to take perspective taking. They can anticipate things are going to happen in their environment. They can even deceive other individuals. In the case of Some hens, maybe there's a big pile of food somewhere they want to go to, they know it's there. They'll give the call to all the other hens to say, the food's over here, guys, come over here. And they'll be in a different place. They get everybody to run over there, and then they'll sneak out and go and find the food for themselves. They can be deceptive if they want to be, just like we can. They are aware of themselves. They're self-aware animals. They use logical reasoning to be able to solve problems. They use transitive inference. If anybody doesn't know what this is, then if you take 3 hens, hen A, B, and C, if hen A and hen B square up to each other, and hen B wins this squaring up and hen A backs down, then hen A watches hen B squaring up to hen C, and hen C wins and hen B backs down. Hen A knows not to square up to hen C because he's already lost, or she's already lost to hen B, and hen B's lost to hen C. So they can transfer that information and say, you know what, it's not in my best interest to try to get on top of this hen because she beat the one that beat me. In behavioral research, they've also shown the ability for basic arithmetic, counting abilities, the understanding of proportions. These are just mind-blowing concepts which animals have this ability to do, and behavioral researchers have the ability to find out. And they can anticipate the future. They can delay their gratification. They have the ability for self-control. They can learn that by pecking at a certain point, it delivers a food reward. But if they wait a certain amount of time, then they can peck at the same point and receive a larger food reward. So they can delay that gratification rather than just jumping straight in and getting their food. Second animal, the pigs. Again, social animal, develops incredibly strong social bonds with individuals. They recognize each other visually. They recognize each other just through their scent, so they will know if another individual is close by, even if they can't see them. They have an incredible language, their own language. They use behaviors, they use their vocalizations, they use facial expressions to give information to other pigs in their social environment. They'll use smells to be able to pass information to other individuals. They understand each other. They're maternal. They're protective of their young. They respond to the needs of their young. And they have specific vocalizations directed towards their young. And even in the case for mothers which are suckling piglets, they will have like a humming sound, which is almost like just a calming hum, which once all the piglets are all suckling, just the mother gives out this calming sort of humming, very low humming sound. And again, maybe that's just there just to kind of try to keep all the piglets nice and calm. They enjoy play. Again, they learn from each other socially. They have great memories. They can recall information, store information, recall it, learn about spatial situations and memorize those spatial situations. Episodic memory, the ability to know the what, the when, the where about a situation and use that, recalling that information later on. The same, they can delay gratification. They have visual discrimination. They have identity. They can recognize individuals. Some are good problem solvers. And they have perspective taking. And for those of you that came to the talk yesterday, apologies, I'm repeating myself, but this is individuals which can understand information that they have themselves and understand information that they don't have and maybe know that another individual has that information. So in the case of the research which was done here was showing it was small pigs being paired with larger pigs and in a field, and the researchers would go and put drop food into the field behind barriers. The small pigs could see the researchers putting the food in the field. The larger pigs could only see the small pigs. They couldn't see where the food was being distributed. And then both would be released into the field. The small pigs obviously go straight to where they know, where they've seen where the food's being dropped. After the larger pigs would sort of randomly go around, could smell the food, didn't know where it was. After a few trials, the larger pigs realize the small pigs actually know much more than they do. And all they need to do is follow the small pig, and it'll take them to the food source. So they can understand that another individual has more information than they have. The really clever thing with the small pigs, what they saw then the small pigs started to do, they started to say, all right, the large food source is over here, and the small food source is over here. This dude's going to bump me off the food as soon as I get to it. So I'm going to take him to the small pile. So he would use deception. The small pig would then take the large pig to the smaller pile of food, get bumped off it, and then go and get the larger pile of food. So a deception at play as well. Just briefly on some other species, recent research coming out of Exeter University, looking at the fishes, individual guppies here in social groups. They risk approaching a predator to gather information and subsequently communicate this threat to the shoal. So these are individuals which are going out of their way, putting themselves at risk to find and locate a potential predator in their environment, but then going back to the shoal and then informing the shoal that there is a predator there. So referentially communicating information and intentional communication to allow that shoal hopefully to prevent any predation risk. Animal Cognition 2012 published this article. Crayfish demonstrate spatial learning and memory when presented with a maze, learning to successfully navigate the maze and remember the route when presented with the same challenge. Again, incredibly complex cognitive abilities which are being demonstrated, spatial learning, memory in what is the decapod crustacean. Proceedings of the Royal Society 2018 published this. The cleaner shrimp communicate with approaching fish by clapping their claws to let the fish know they are ready to help clean its skin and to ask the fish not to eat it. So these are, cleaner shrimp will clean the parasites and the dead skin off other fish. They have sort of cleaning stations and other fish will come down to these cleaning stations. But these are predatory fish, so these are fish which are likely to, also could easily eat them. But there's a communication between these two individuals. Both individuals want something from this relationship, not just now, but they want it again the next time the fish visits the cleaning station. So they come up with an agreement between themselves and they say, you come in, I'm going to signal to you, if you then reciprocate that by not eating me, and I will clean you. And this is what's happening. This is very incredibly complex communication between a decapod crustacean and a fish. Animal Cognition 2022, just last year. Potential for emotional states being shown in decapod crustaceans. Daily threatening experiences change the behavior of shrimp, cause them to select a regular avoidance strategy when they encounter risks and unknown strategies, with the title of Anxiety-like and Fearful Behavior of Shrimp. So the relevance of this, obviously there's a relevance to this for the welfare of animals. Animals are often, as we know, as we all too well know, denied the opportunity to express many of those social and also those cognitive capacities. And many are also experiencing these intense negative emotional states, particularly when they are within intensively farmed systems. So social factors, deprivation of social contact or crowding, social instability with individuals which are bonded together, then being separated, obviously triggering these physiological, behavioral indicators of stress. And there are management implications to that. We can actually do things to try to mitigate that, particularly within farmed animals, identifying bonded individuals, trying to ensure that they remain in social contact to help them to reduce their stress. So cows, when they're milking, trying to allow individuals to be able to go together. Sheep or any animal, any of the farmed animals, when they're going through a procedure like being weighed, being vaccinated, being handled in some way, trying to ensure that individuals are known, bonded individuals, and trying to reduce the stress. This is also relevant, of course, I'm talking a lot about farmed animals, but relevant to all animals, captive animals. And some of you in the room will know Jake Vasey, animal welfare scientist. And I remember him telling me a story about when he started working at a zoo. I won't name the zoo, but he started working there. They had a big gorilla population, very large social group of gorillas. And when he started there, he said, the people he was working with said, we really need to help us out. They're incredibly stressed. We've given them everything that we feel they could have. They've got a great environment, but incredibly stressed. And what it was, he he saw what the management regime was, and they were bringing out for health checks one gorilla after another, for a general health check, which is great. They were giving them the best veterinary care that they could give them. But what it meant was, every single day, one member of that family group wasn't present. And it would take 2 or 3 days to get that member back in again, because they'd taken him out of the social group one day, he'd be transported to the veterinary hospital, he'd have his health check, maybe take a day or two to recover from that, and then they would integrate him back in. And at the same time, they'd be taking out another member because it was their health check. And so therefore, the group was never stable, and that really upset the gorillas. And so they were in a constant state of stress because someone was being removed. So he helped to address that, set up a different regime. I'm not saying health checks are not good, health checks are good, but you need to be aware of we need to be aware of the potential disruption particularly to a highly social species like gorillas. The bonds between the parent and the youngster, one of the most incredibly strong bonds, particularly between the mother and the youngsters that we know of. They're particularly strong. They need to be respected. They need to be nurtured. Cows, if they're living in an extensive environment, will remove themselves from their herd. They will give birth. They will usually spend a day or two with their youngster away from the herd, and then they will reintroduce the calf back into their herd. They also get maternal support by forming these nurseries. So mothers coming together and looking after each other's calves, one mother staying by, looking after other calves while the other mothers go off and find food, and then individuals swapping, changing that role. There are some improved practices. Obviously, this has a big impact on dairy farming, removal of calves. There are some improved practices. And there's now quite a bit of research looking at trying to maintain contact between mothers and calves, which is great. It will improve welfare. In some cases, this is even when suckling of for the milk is not being allowed. So maybe the mothers are still going off to be milked, and the calves are being removed and being fed by hand, but then allowing those individuals to come back together to at least have experienced that bond. And also, if calves are removed, then it's essential that they are pair bonded with other calves, and they can redirect that need, that social need to be with what was their mother towards being with another individual. Animals experience both these positive and these negative emotional states of optimism and pessimism, depending on how they're being managed. So in cases like the pigs on the pig farm here, they're being managed in a very, very poor environment. Therefore, if novel stimulus comes into that environment, they're very much likely to be very cautious of it, very nervous of it. Something's happening. You put the same stimulus into an environment of a free-range pigs that have got an extensive environment, they're curious. They're like, "Oh, what's this? This is something new. We're all going to go and see it." You can see that difference in optimism and pessimism about what the likely outcome of something is about to be. These incredible advanced social and these cognitive abilities need to be taken into consideration. The ability for animals, or the animals being self-aware, being aware of themselves and their situation, but also being aware of others' situation, being able to empathize with other individuals, taking the perspective of other individuals. What implication is this having upon them when they're in a situation where either themselves or others are going through a stressful situation? And also this ability to learn socially. Many animals have this ability to pass information, to pass knowledge, and to pass skills along these vertical lines between each individuals and these horizontal lines from mother down to their infants. And this can have implications for them as individuals, but also for populations as well. Not so much with the farmed animals. Unfortunately, they don't generally live that long to be able to have an impact from a population level. But again, if we go back to captive animals and a conservation perspective, this is incredibly important for captive wild animals, which we're looking maybe to reintroduce back into the wild. We now have captive wildlife breeding programs all over the world, breeding animals who do not have the ability to learn the skills to survive in the wild because they're not not being taught. They aren't going through this cultural transmission, these social learning processes. And then we have individuals which potentially we want to put back into the wild, but they just haven't got the skills of the ones which were in the wild in the first place. So there's a population level problem if we don't take into consideration animals' ability to socially learn from each other and transmit these skills and knowledge culturally along those lines. Within, again, the farmed animal environment, there are things that can be done to try to help that. Animals transferred into new environments are obviously going to be confronted with new challenges. We can provide them with social learning opportunities. Experienced individuals within an environment. If you have experienced individuals that know how a system works, where to find food, what is expected of them, you bring new individuals in, they will quickly learn. They will be able to watch and learn from the experienced individuals, and it will help to de-stress them as an individual when they go into that new environment, rather than just putting everybody into that environment all at once and everybody being stressed. An animal's natural environment, the farmed animals have descended from their natural cousins. The natural environment would have presented significant challenges, which means that animals have incredibly good cognitive abilities of problem solving. We now have animals in relatively sterile environments. We need to acknowledge that these animals can solve problems, that they want to solve problems, that they have the cognitive ability to solve problems, and then provide them with appropriate challenges beyond that of just the simple novel enrichments, beyond just putting something into the environment just to keep them happy. There's been a lot of work recently on goats and problem solving for goats, and this is just the picture shows one of those examples. Goats, incredibly inquisitive animals, incredibly intelligent and cognitive complex animals, and can solve very complex problems. Now initially, some of those experiments would have been so that they receive a reward. So you get an incentive for the goat to be able to carry out, learn, work out how to solve a problem, and then receive a reward for it. But what really was found is that actually they will carry out solving these problems even when there's no reward. There's no food reward, or there's no extra social contact that they will get from from carrying out these tasks. They actually want to be challenged. They are a cognitively complex species. And so therefore, it's like we are, they don't want to be in a barren environment and just given a football to kick around. They want something more to challenge them in their everyday. And we know that this is a positive experience. In fact, I should have looked this up, but I think it may have even been Peter Roberts at CIWF who coined the eureka moment for cows, when cows show this. They solve the problem, and it triggers these positive emotions, and it improves their well-being. We know that this exists within cows. We see them they show happiness, and other animals when they have been challenged, appropriately challenged cognitively, and then have solved that problem. We talked about the memory capacity of animals. Many species have these complex memory capacities, being able to memorize other individuals, places and scenarios. And this also can have implications for these individuals. They can remember the negative experiences that they've had before. They can remember the individuals that they had bonds with that are no longer with them. And they can remember the positive experiences as well. We need to take that into consideration to say it's not just a one-off event for individuals. If it's a stressful situation, they will memorize that situation, and that will potentially lead for stress further in their life. The ability to discriminate between and subsequently recall other individuals. Individuals within a social group will have positive and negative interactions. If you can then discriminate and recognize individuals, it may well be, if it's been a negative interaction, that you're going to cause a certain amount of stress by that individual being still within your social environment. This goes as well to beyond just individual within species, but also it has implications for the human handlers, the people which are working with these farm animals. In this case, it looks like there's a positive relationship between this farmer and the cow. That's great. But in many cases, it may be a negative one. And so therefore, the cows, or whatever animal it is, will be able to recognize somebody coming towards them and know that maybe there's a negative experience that's about to happen, or think there is because they've had one before. Animals understand when objects continue to exist even when they're out of sight. So object permanence. We all know it, something disappears, it doesn't just go out of our lives, we know it's still there. Again, exactly the same for animals. So therefore, the same thing. If you've had a negative experience with another individual, in a case here, maybe another hen, just because they're not around at the time, you can't see them, doesn't mean to say they're not stressed by the fact that you know they still exist. Just because if you had a negative experience with a human handler, just because maybe they're not there, doesn't mean to say that you live in a situation where you're fearful of them coming back and having another negative experience. And animals can categorize things as well, so it doesn't have to be the same experience for them. They can put them into these categories. The ability to group items based on common features, which then has implications with regards how an animal or an individual adapts to any novel stressors. So similar events, so a negative handling event by one person may mean that if another person is coming in to handle you, you're likely to think it's going to be a negative thing because it's in the same category. And animals with these complex abilities, these complex ability for empathy towards others, these complex capacities of understanding others and caring for others, they may have a desire even in some cases to help others, and yet many of the management practices that we put these animals in are preventing them from developing and maintaining some of these capacities. And also these incredibly complex communicative abilities. We know now that from recent research on pigs, have this incredible vocabulary, better than mine, obviously. And their communication, their ability, all these different communications have been categorized into 19 different categories, not just 19 vocalizations, but 19 categories of vocalizations, so each of them containing many, many different vocalizations. All of these are being understood by others, by other individuals, and we need to be able to understand them ourselves, and that can help us to improve the welfare of pigs in captivity. If we can then listen to the pigs, we will know whether they are communicating those positive emotions or those negative emotions, and know whether we need to adapt that environment, hopefully to move them from a negative to a positive. But also to be aware that other individuals are aware of what one individual is communicating. So just because maybe one pig is in a stressful situation and is communicating something which is stressful, doesn't mean to say that we need to know that's having an impact on all of the pigs, because all of them will be able to understand that communication and then maybe put them into a state of stress. And I return to at the end of this back to the fishes, of course. Cornell University just last year, look who's talking now, the fishes. There's a whole lot of talking going on beneath the waves. Fish are far more likely to communicate with sound than generally thought. And some fish have been doing this for at least 155 million years. And it went on to say, representatives of several dozen families of fishes vocalize in various behavioral contexts, such as distress situations and agnostic interactions. Therefore, you can look at the situation for fish on fish farms. There's going to be a huge amount of negative interactions between individuals, a huge amount of stress. This is not just one individual which is now stressed. It's communicating that stress to all of the other individuals in that situation. So as our knowledge of animal capacities increases, we're discovering this evidence and this capacity for these complex emotions, emotional and cognitive capacities in a wide range of species, the birds, the mammals, the fishes, the crustaceans. And these capacities need to be taken into consideration when we design our management system for animals, and even to the point then if we can't meet them, then maybe we shouldn't be keeping the animals in the situations that we're in, that we keep them in. And we need to look at this also from an assessment point as well. Are we taking into consideration all of these points when we're assessing the welfare of animals? We assess their physical fitness, we assess their housing, we assess the diets they have. We assess whether they exhibit appropriate behaviors, and this includes a number of those social aspects. But are we looking at their ability to develop and sustain long-term relationships? Are we looking at the ability to exhibit, in some cases, in some individuals, paternal, but also mainly maternal behaviors? Are we looking at the emotional impacts of individuals which have been bonded individuals which are being separated from each other? And are we looking at the emotional impacts of observing others suffering? the ability for them to fully utilize their senses, to learn socially, to communicate effectively, and to solve problems, to learn and to use that knowledge at a later date. I'll finish with saying we need to use our increasing knowledge of these social, these emotional, and the cognitive capacities of animals to challenge management practices which are causing animals to suffer, and as an education tool to generate empathy for animals to hopefully influence human behaviours for the better. Thank you very much.